second. I know that we will be having a number of board members will be joining online today. So just get started. Okay. So welcome everyone. Oh, and I just realized it still says March meeting on anyway, ignore that. But welcome to the April CPUN community meeting. To start off, I am Liz Stallniger, the board president for Central Park United Neighbors, and a little bit about Central Park United Neighbors. CPUN is the registered neighborhood organization, or RNO, for the Central Park community. We provide a working forum for the residents of Central Park to participate in creating, developing, and fostering a vibrant urban community dedicated to social equity, environmental responsibility, and economic opportunity. At our monthly meetings, we facilitate the discussion of key issues with neighbors, engage in proactive problem prevention, and amicable problem solving. CPUN is committed to providing an inclusive and welcoming environment for all members of our community. Our mission is the betterment of the city of Denver by providing a forum for the residents living in Central Park to discuss and resolve issues, a network of communication, a means of acting on matters of importance to the community as a whole, and we promote public service, civil civic discourse, and collective efficacy. We're an all-volunteer board of Central Park residents and a registered 501c3. And we'll just do a quick agenda overview and then move right into our guest speaker who's joined us tonight. So during our community hour, we'll be hearing from Keisha Sarpong with the Colorado Domestic Violence Fatality Review Program. And then around 7:15, we'll have community partner updates. During the board hour, we'll have a treasurer's report and a budget proposal discussion on contributing to the INC documentary screening event that we're co-hosting. At 7:45 p.m., we'll have committee report outs, and this will include a discussion of the last Friday's meeting with the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure on traffic safety in the school corridor around 56th Avenue and Central Park Boulevard. And then at 8:15, we'll kind of wrap up with some board topics. We have received a request for a support letter for the Shops at Northfield project. So we'll have a quick initial conversation about that. We'll do a quick update on the board slate that will be coming soon, and just a look ahead for our May forum. And so without further ado, I just want to introduce Keisha Sarpong with the Colorado Domestic Violence Fatality and Review Program and the Rose Andom Center. And this is a follow-up from the Health and Safety Committee's meeting with Keisha last fall. And we wanted to bring some of the awareness and information from that meeting to our general community meeting. So Keisha, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that you can share yours. Okay. And I'll also just kind of monitor the chat if we get questions in the chat, since it'll be hard on your computer.
Okay. Should I see? Oh, just no. I can see.
Yeah, you can just sit.
Okay.
You know, address us.
And everyone can hear. I don't need to like unmute.
You're good.
Okay.
Yep. No,
Okay.
there's an echo.
Well, thank you all for having me. My name is Keisha. I am the Denver Domestic Violence Fatality. Oh my gosh, I'm like, what's my name? There's so many acronyms. Sorry. I'm the Fatality Review Program Manager at the Rose Andom Center. So my role is a little bit unique. But before we start, I just wanted to give some space in memory of the lives that have been taken from the Denver metro area this year and recent years due to domestic violence. In 2023, there were 58 total domestic violence fatalities that had occurred in 47 cases. And I wanted to read a poem. You had a sad death, but you are not a sad thing. Your life is important. Your story is more than its ending. I'm sorry it often brings more tears than smiles. I promise that you are far from a sad thing. I wanted to share that with you all because I know that in these last few years, you've had a couple DV fatality losses in your community. And so I just wanted to share that with you all. So I think what's important to talk about before I kind of introduce the work that I do, when we're talking about DV fatalities, some of the kind of key risk factors and indicators, what we know is that the most lethal form of domestic violence is homicide. We also know that access to firearms by a harm doer is a high indicator for lethality. From our data from 2023, we found that 58 of our total fatalities were caused by firearms, so 76%. In looking at victim deaths, 63% of the victim deaths were caused by firearms. In regards to collateral deaths, 71% of those deaths were caused by firearms. And in looking at perpetrator fatalities, 95% of those deaths were caused by fatalities. So what else do we know? We know that a woman who has suffered a non-fatal strangulation incident with their intimate partner is 750% more likely to be killed by that same offender. We also know that strangulation has been identified as one of the most lethal forms of both domestic and sexual violence. It also takes 4.4 pounds of force to compress a jugular vein. Okay, so what is our mission? So by reviewing domestic violence fatalities, we bridge gaps in systems, we foster collaboration among multidisciplinary stakeholders, and prioritize victim-centered approaches. Through education, comprehensive reviews, and actionable recommendations, we aim to improve interventions and drive meaningful change for safer and more equitable communities. So what are domestic violence fatality review teams? So in the state of Colorado, it says, that means. Okay, I think that was in here. So in the state of Colorado, right now, currently, there are 3 active domestic violence fatality review teams in the state. So a city, county, or judicial district can have a fatality review team that comes from state statute. So the Colorado Office of the Attorney General is the board chair for the Colorado Domestic Violence Fatality Review Board. So myself, I run the Denver team. There is a local team that newly was formed in October in El Paso County, which is really huge. If you take a look at our recent reports, you'll see that second from Denver, El Paso County has had the highest number, second to highest number of DV fatalities across the state, and then Mesa County. So what domestic violence fatality review teams do is that they examine DV fatalities in their specific region and look at where there are opportunities for intervention and prevention points. Kind of like this team here that gathers, you guys are looking at what's going on in the community. You're taking note of issues that are arising, especially like community violence, domestic violence, right? You've had a series of incidents that have occurred in your community and you're wanting to take action. So what our fatality review teams do is we look at kind of the background stories to the individuals involved. So who were the victims on these incidents and who were the perpetrators of these incidents and kind of what brought them together, kind of who were they as individuals, kind of what was their childhood history, kind of sort of forming into adult histories, kind of were there was there prior criminal histories together or independently? Who knew of the prior domestic violence incidents, if there were any? And something that has become a larger conversation is that when these fatalities have occurred, there seems to be a misnomer that this is something that is known to law enforcement, that there has been multiple calls for service to the home for law enforcement. And what we have seen is that these fatalities have been this is the first thing that's on law enforcement's radar. This is not the case for every fatality that we've looked at, but in a few that we've looked at, the DV fatality is the first act of violence that is known to law enforcement, which creates a challenge for law enforcement, right? You're coming to a scene and it's a DV fatality and you have no reported instances with this couple. And what we found is that those close to the offenders and the victims are more likely to know about the violence that has been occurring. And for us in the DV space, especially as interventionists, how can we inform the community and public on those risk factors for lethality? Kind of how can we equip and train folks to be able to provide information, support for their family members and friends when they see concerning behavior for those that they love that are experiencing domestic violence, and kind of how can they open themselves up as a safe person, which is huge, right? When somebody comes to you and tells you that they are experiencing domestic violence. I would also say that for folks who find themselves in, we know, I'll take a step back, but we know that domestic violence impacts everyone across race, gender, sex, um, status, income, right? And so in many of the cases that we have also reviewed, we see what's hard is that when folks maybe work in professions like DHS or I'm just gonna use DHS as an example, but for
Denver Human Services.
yeah, sorry, Denver Human Services, or maybe just professions that maybe people would see as more prestigious, higher up, law enforcement, right? For it to for it to be more challenging for those folks to identify themselves as victims of law enforcement. So what can we be doing for everybody to feel comfortable to recognize some of those warning signs and risky behavior, warning signs for lethality? So that is a bit about the review process. So what we're trying to find out is how did the victims of violence navigate through the systems after that violence? And then what was the degree of coordination, communication, and collaboration between those systems? So when the Denver team has been around since the 90s, and what they realize is that, even if the fatality had occurred in Denver, the two parties involved may have had an open case in Aurora or Arapahoe County, or there may have also been a DV incident in Adams County. And so the idea of forming the Denver Metro Fatality Review Team was to also encompass folks from the 1st, 2nd, and 17th, 18th Judicial District, and that was written into the state statute. So this is just a little bit of kind of that framework to the Colorado Domestic Violence Fatality Review Board, as I shared. So it creates kind of that communication and coordination between stakeholders and policymakers. And so in creating a statutory framework for local review teams, it provides a bridge between local teams that are collecting and analyzing data and the state legislation to develop and implement recommendations generated from the case reviews. One kind of key development that came from the fatality review process is that law enforcement in Boulder County use what's called the lethality assessment protocol. So with that, they work with victim advocates in their area. They do a screening with victims to determine their risk for lethality. And depending on the victim's score, they would then pair them with a local victim advocate in their area to connect them with for resources and services. So a little bit about the model. So a DV fatality occurs, the case will move through the legal system and reaches this position. After a period of time, the case will become available for review. The case is then selected by the Fatality Review Program Manager. The case is then reviewed by the Fatality Review Team. And then the findings from all case reviews are analyzed and included in the Colorado Domestic Violence Fatality Review Board Annual Report, which you can find on the Office of the Attorney General's website. And I will say something that is really important to myself and our team is that we invite the detective, the assigned detective on the case, and also the assigned prosecutor to walk us through really kind of the case in itself. We can't prevent what we don't know, and it's really important to have that kind of buy-in from law enforcement, but also from the district attorney's office. You know, for those that are involved in the review process, we have folks that work with victims and offenders in their day-to-day. We have victim advocates that participate. We have folks represented from each of the judicial districts that I shared. But it's important that when we're talking about the intervention and prevention points, you know, we're having these conversations that can be applied to folks that are actively working with victims and actively working with offenders and being able to pinpoint some of these concerning behaviors as they arise. So I thought it might be helpful. I know that many are probably familiar with the Gabby Petito case, but I thought it would be helpful to kind of use this case to kind of speak to the lens of the fatality review process. So Gabby Petito disappeared while on a cross-country trip with her fiance, Brian. Gabby moved to Florida to live with Brian after 9 months of dating. So something on through our fatality review process, we have a red flags checklist. And one of the things that we highlight is whirlwind relationship. So while they knew each other from high school, they didn't officially start dating until after the fact. And so we would say that 9 months is a short duration of time to then move in with this partner away from her family in a different state. The pair were living in a van while traveling across the country. When we think about domestic violence manifests when through themes of power and control, but also thinking about isolation. Think about traveling across the country in a van, a closed area with just one other person, and how isolating that could be. But also, there was just one interaction with law enforcement via traffic stop in Moab after a reported 911 call by an onlooker that preceded both of their deaths. Gabby was deemed the aggressor and permitted to stay in the van while Brian was taken to a hotel for the night. Gabby's cause of death was strangulation. And if you remembered earlier, I shared this statistic about individuals who have been strangled are likely to then be killed by their offender. And some of these themes with this case that stood out for me in doing this work is the isolation, unreported prior strangulation by friends, which came out later, the perpetrator's unemployed, underemployed. Gabby was the breadwinner in the relationship due to her social media work. And so these are just things that kind of we would talk about or have conversations about. And in doing the fatality review, what's obviously hard is that the two individuals that can really speak to the relationship dynamics are the folks that are involved. And when you have a murder suicide, you don't have that context. But that is where having family and friends who can really speak to the relationship dynamics are so crucial, especially in kind of what occurred in the days before that led up to the fatality. Again, this is just kind of what fatality review teams are present in Colorado. I also would say that there are entities across the state that have like high risk teams and they meet on a multidisciplinary team basis. And so they essentially are doing the work of fatality review teams, just not in a formal capacity. So Pagosa Springs, they have a multidisciplinary team. We use them as an example as they are represented on the larger board through the AG's office, but they review high-risk DV cases and they can assume the role of a fatality review team should there be a case that reaches disposition and is available to review. Also, child fatality review teams in the state also can serve as the DV fatality review team in that county should there not be a local DV fatality review team, because we know that there's overlaps, especially if mom was killed and then also there was a child killed as well. I'm going to skip this because I also talked about it. But looking at the benefits of local teams, they have the awareness of the dynamics of their communities, the opportunity to discuss challenges and barriers of victims. They can tailor interventions specific to their area. And then teams would assume the role of identifying DV fatalities in their community. So that's what's nice with working alongside Mesa County and El Paso County as well. They kind of have the pulse on what's going on in their communities and can tailor interventions specifically, right? What's maybe happening in Denver may look a little bit different than what's going on in rural El Paso County, especially with access and challenges that survivors are facing. A little bit about the data collection process. So I utilize different methods to collect data each year for the work that goes into the report. So, but we rely on local law enforcement and jurisdictions to report their DV fatalities to the board. After our 2023 report, the AG's office created a mechanism for individuals to report their DV fatalities directly to the board. And that's not only for law enforcement, but people in the community can also utilize that reporting site on the website. And why is DV fatality review important? We know that these DV fatalities are preventable if we have all the information to identify risks, and if we have the systems in place to communicate those risk factors and coordinate intervention, we can create risk mitigation opportunities. DV fatality allows us to learn from those cases. What are the most significant risk factors? What points of intervention may have been present, and how can intervention points be maximized and or created? So I wanted to give you guys examples. So this is the red flags checklist that we use when we're going through the review process. So these red flags are pertinent to the DV perpetrator, but it's really helpful to go through the case and kind of look at what things were present at the time. I think in kind of speaking to folks, especially to the community, I think when we think of domestic violence, we think of in heterosexual relationships, we think of like the woman with the black eye. We may think of someone that's being told, oh, he said he would kill me. But I think in the concerning behavior that we've seen in our cases, as well as instances where there's been no prior physical incidents prior to the fatality, but are cases where the perpetrator is possessive of the victim, the stalking and monitoring behavior, and that perceived loss of control. Also, I would add where there is the separation is imminent, or there's a estrangement and separation from victim. As I mentioned earlier, domestic violence is all about power and control, but when an abuser realizes that they don't have their hooks into a victim or over the victim anymore, and they've realized that the victim has moved on, it is a very dangerous time for that victim. And that is where we have seen an increased risk, not only for the victim, but for folks in the immediate circle, right? That's where we have seen the collateral deaths, but also the escalated threats of suicide, right? We include in our counts perpetrator suicides, but also collateral deaths, so deaths of anybody outside of the immediate relationship couple. But when I speak of when that perpetrator realizes that those hooks are off, I think about those cases where the perpetrator will take their life and then they'll take the lives of the shared children as one final act of that control over the victim. And just I wanted to share a little bit more of the data from our last year's report. So last year, in 2023, we had 58 total fatalities. And what was interesting because 2 years before, we had our highest number of total fatalities. And what I want to say with that is that for us, that does not mean that domestic violence is on the decline, because both of the numbers from the Denver Police Department DV unit, their DV numbers had both increased, but also looking at the numbers from the city attorney's office, their number of DV cases that they filed last year also increased. So I think it's a little bit interesting kind of looking at this, because on the surface, you would think, oh my gosh, like, you know, DV deaths have gone down, like DV is going down. So I think it gives like this false impression. all the while knowing that from the DV unit, their cases have gone up. Not homicides, but just like their DV, the cases assigned to the DV unit, and as well as the cases filed by the city attorney's office.
Is there any, can I ask a question? Is there any thought to whether the kind of, I guess, like the case is actually going to like law enforcement? Is that in any way like, I guess, an intervention that could potentially be preventing the deaths? Like if there's an increase in DV cases that the team is working on, that those are ones that will not necessarily like become lethal, I guess, is that like, I guess, is there any sort of like sense of a connection versus just kind of like the correlation?
Not that we, for at least for last year's, not that we can like say or that we've
I don't know.
that we've found. I mean, I think what's hard is also like the 2021 and at least 2021, what we had considered also is like what role did the pandemic play on those deaths? Also, we know that the pandemic exacerbated a lot of the elements that occur within the cycle of domestic violence, right? You know, people are not going to the office, they're not going to, they're not, we were all kind of, I don't want to say like shackled to our homes, but we were away from the folks that if there was something going on, the folks that would kind of be able to like recognize, right? You know, our friends, our coworkers, that if there was something going on that might be able to notice, not necessarily that like, oh my gosh, you're in a DV situation, but like they're not acting like themselves. So being able to kind of piece together a little bit and be able to kind of start to ask more questions. So kind of, I wanted to share this as well, kind of as we talked about the role that the community plays. So in our reviews that we do, we consider who in the inner circles of the victims and the perpetrators were most likely to know about the DV. And this is kind of why that the community intervention points are huge, so that it's the victim's parents, the victim's siblings, and the victim's friends were more likely to know or be aware about the domestic violence. I have the actual percentages, but I see if I can read them for you. Oh, I'll go, but at the end of this, I'll go back and get the percentages for you because I do think it's important. Okay. Some big takeaways is that okay. Even when there are no completed or near fatalities, we know that DV impacts the whole families and communities, which is kind of what has kind of the impetus of this, right? Children who witness domestic violence fatalities hear them from another room, see a dead or harmed live body, especially of a parent or sibling, and are highly traumatized. We know that attempted murders of children are rare. When DV perpetrators want to kill children, they almost always do, all of which makes community engagement and intervention crucial. The first piece is through knowing what supports are in the community. So I also wanted to put some brief resources. So there's Judy's House and also the Heartlight Center. And they both offer supports for families and children. And then the Heartlight Center offers an array of groups and classes specific to the type of grief. So some could be sibling, loss of a parent, loss of a child, which I think is really important. I had slides about like throws in there, but honestly, I can just like talk that and answer questions. Okay. Yeah.
So do, I guess, like, do that, asking folks have questions.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions?
Bar graph that you shared 2 or 3 slides ago, it showed that about 19% of the time neighbors were aware. And I guess that's where, not that, yeah, that's the one. So it's like 4 out of 5 times neighbors didn't know what was going on. So for people who, you know, were living close by and had no idea, like what, for people who want to feel like they can impact things, like if you don't know, then, I mean, what should people,
Guess
as
what
a
are warning
community member,
signs, yeah.
yeah, what can people, I don't know,
Do.
yeah, how can people be empowered to help other people?
Or be aware of
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
before even.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and I know it is, if I could feel like that could be like a twofold, right? Because I feel like, especially when, say, depending, I guess I'll use the example of like in an apartment, right? If you're in an apartment, there's shared wall, you may hear your neighbors fighting and you're like, I don't know what to do. I know, and I see that there's someone from DPD, so they actually might have this number, but something that new resource that I've learned is that there's a text, I believe it's a text I don't know if it's a text 911. But there is a number that I think it is a text 911 where you're able to make a report, but not, I believe not necessarily either like identify yourself, but essentially it's a way to, I think, add into that collective efficacy where, right, where people feel like what's hard is that they want to get involved, but they don't want to feel like something bad is going to happen to them if they do intervene, or also maybe like put more harm on the victim. Or because I feel like there's cases that we've reviewed where, there is a long assault going on and folks have heard something, but no one intervened. And no one is saying like, go kick down the door, right? Many of us in here we're not trained first responders. We're not prepared to go do that. But I think there's something to be said about at least informing the people that should be informed so that they are able to respond. And I can follow up to actually get that actual number, but I believe it's a text 911. Lieutenant Hines, I don't want to put you on the spot, but does that sound accurate?
Yes, in fact, I was gonna chime in there, but didn't want to interrupt you. You can text directly to 911 just like you would text other numbers. So, and people are certainly welcome to remain anonymous when they're reporting crimes. It can help us if you're willing to identify yourself, but just getting us the information can be really helpful because, as you guys were saying on here so far, um, there are a lot of times when neighbors and others are aware of these things going on, and that early intervention can really save lives.
Thank you. I would also say being aware of what are the local resources in the community. What are the local DV resources closest to you. I think that is also key. I think especially when and if somebody close to you or someone you may not know, in the event, that a neighbor confides in you and says like, hey, this is what's happening at home, I need some support. So like just knowing like you can go to the Rosanna Center, you can go.
Say, actually, do you want to talk about the Rosanna?
Yeah, and I'm happy to, talk about the Rosanna Centers,
Yeah.
or Safe House Denver. So I'm fortunate that through my role, I'm actually housed at the Rosanna Center, which is a family justice center here. And so the Rosanna Center is a family justice center. So we're located on Fox Street, right by the courthouse. And so we are I like to call it like a one-stop shop for survivors, basically, or anyone experiencing violence. So the idea or premise of a family justice center is that any and any and all services that someone might need kind of on their journey for freedom of violence is in one building. So as soon as somebody walks through these doors, they have the opportunity to connect with both systems-based partners. So that's law enforcement, that's the district attorney's office in Denver, that is the city attorney's office, that is probation, pretrial, but then they also have the opportunity to meet with community-based partners. So that would be the Rosanna Center. So we are the main domestic violence provider, Project Safeguard. So they are one would go to for legal services, protection order, court support, divorce, custody, matters. Safe House Denver, they are one of the local shelters in the area. They also offer counseling, but essentially staff from those agencies have like a satellite office at our center. And so they are available to meet with clients and chat with clients, offer their services when folks come in the building. So we pride ourselves on being a space where folks can receive their services with dignity. This is our nest area where clients sit and can wait. And this space was designed with feedback from survivors themselves. And it's a really just nice, relaxed area just for folks to just be themselves, free and safe before they're able to meet with any of the community-based or systems-based partners in our building. What's important to note is that Rose A&M Center staff are confidential based advocates. And so that's the key also with the community-based staff in the building is that their services are confidential. So that's the difference between the community-based entities versus the systems. So the systems are like the governmental entities. And so they're not adhered to confidentiality. Whereas like if somebody comes in and speaks to an advocate at my center, that advocate is not going to share what information was discussed unless that victim would like that shared with maybe the detective that they're working with, and a release of information would need to be signed. So anybody that the victim is also working with, especially because there's so many different partners, there might be, dual different people you're talking to. So that victim would have to say that, they would like this information to be shared. But that is something that is initiated by the victim. But it's important that folks know that our staff are confidential and that it's, I think it releases any fears, stress. Now, we are mandated reporters. So if somebody is speaking about, harm to themselves or others, we would have to share that. But so yeah, I think the key model to the Family Justice Center is that we're co-located multidisciplinary services for streamlined access, single safe location, the combination of system-based and then nonprofit, and victims can access one or both. So sometimes you may have a victim come in and they're kind of just not sure, right? You just experienced a traumatic event. And you may have gotten like a card that's like, go to the Rose A&M Center, you're not sure what to do, but you are able to kind of talk to different folks. And then later they may decide that they want to speak to law enforcement, make a report. Also forgot to share that VAU from the Denver Police Department's in our building too. So folks who may are wondering, I have a case, but I haven't heard anything. I'm looking to get a follow-up. They have the option to do that too. And that's also the nice part about having like satellite staff from the DA's office in the building and then the city attorney's office building as well. I sit on a collaborative team separate from the fatality review team, and we meet 2 times a week, but really we go over high risk cases that are coming in from the police department. And so that is another way that cases get referred to different entities, as well as like who is the best individual to take on this case. And this information about this case is concerning to me because of this, right? It may be that this is a short relationship of 3 months and strangulation occurred, threats to kill, access to a firearm. This individual might have 2 prior city cases with this victim and an open case in Adams County. And here are the things that concern me. And so a lot of times I'm able to also bring in kind of some of that background information of the risky behavior, red flag behaviors from my reviews of like, all these things are concerning me because, especially like on a case like that, you know? So there's a lot of collaboration that happens in our building, and it's great. And in terms of who's appropriate for services, anyone that identifies as a victim or survivor of IPV, there's not a time limit. Any gender orientation, language, if someone is a non-English speaker, and we don't have someone in our building who speaks that language, we use language line, for interpretation services. Men, trans individuals who identify survivors can receive services. I know that there is a stigma for men survivors of DV. They are welcome in our building. We know that they experience domestic violence. Our building is ADA compliant. Language line, as I shared, we work with people regardless of a documented status. And it's up to clients if they wish to interact with law enforcement. And there's no reporting requirement to receive services. People don't have to have a active police report or anything to receive services. We predominantly serve the Denver metro area, but we can serve folks outside the Denver area. And just like the caveat that for some of like specific resources, it may be confined to like living in the Denver metro area. And also same too as like for some of the specific resources or like financial resources that it may be limited to like the Denver metro area or when the violence occurred. So just wanting to name that.
Are the services provided for free?
Yeah. The only service that isn't like free is we have, so Denver Health is on site in our building too, and they have medical clinics. So that's the only thing where it's not depending on like the insurance and things like that. Yeah. But I believe it, that I think it actually might be in that pamphlet, because I don't want to say like that it's not that, I don't think that they're, when folks call and are wanting to be seen that we're like, what's your insurance, you know? But as it says that they have a variety of financial assistance options to help you pay for your care. So I do think that for their services, I think that there is some sort of, I think that there may need to be insurance with that. But Denver Health is in the building, and I will say that especially for individuals who have really controlling abusers, it's really great that we have the clinic because it's a clinic, right? So we have folks who come in and they're saying that they're going to the clinic and the clinic sends them home with paperwork that they were seen by Denver Health. And it doesn't tip off people. So that is just a really great service, and everyone should have access to medical care without their partner manipulating that too. And also when folks come in and they have, people can have support people, but we do separate the support people. Sometimes there's people that are their support people that are their abusers, and we just want to make sure that we're not putting our clients are not in a potential volatile situation as they're trying to seek services. So we have the support people wait in the lobby. So
Any final questions from folks? I don't see anything in the chat on Zoom, but folks in the room.
Want to be sure that we say thank you for the work that you're doing in the community and for talking to us tonight.
Yeah, I think it sounds like probably like 2 takeaways for those of us in the neighborhood is one, knowing our neighbors, like, or just like having some sort of opening for like folks who might just need someone else. And then also just being aware of like something like the Rose Handem Center, or that you can text 911 in an emergency situation, like that just kind of having that. So since we record this and we put this up on our YouTube channel and then share it out in our community email, I do want to provide kind of links to resources for folks. So, including like your slide deck and then the organizations that you mentioned.
And I can send you an email with a bunch more too.
Okay, that would be
Happy to
great.
Do that, yeah. But yeah, I think that's huge. Like, yeah, knowing your neighbors, getting to know them, because also I think someone that wants to keep their victim isolated doesn't want them to know their neighbors. They don't want them to have a support. And I think that just being able to build community with the people around you is huge. And that's not to say that, you know, that your neighbors are bad and that they're doing this to their partners, but I just think right now, you know, just being able to build community with people is huge, and it goes a long way.
It's part of what we're trying to do in the neighborhood. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for letting Keisha take up your time. Yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it. Thank you. We do have to move on, but we'll be in touch
Yes.
by email and then share out the resources for everyone. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. I'll go back to share the slide deck, and then we'll move into the community partner updates. And for the meeting today, Jesse in the district aid office let me know that there's a subcommittee for the Vibrant Denver Bond that's meeting right now. So he's not able to make it, but he sent his updates for us to read. So he said, thanks to everyone who attended the April 3rd Quebec Corridor Task Force kickoff meeting discussing the present and future of the shelter corridor on Quebec Street. The office is accepting volunteers to serve on the task force. So if you're interested or have further questions about the task force, please email district8@denvergov.org. And so I'll also share that out in our next email update. So thanks also to everyone who attended the Vibrant Bond meetings on April 2nd and April 9th. The next stage of the bond process will be grading the projects that were surfaced in those meetings in subcommittees, which is being tonight on various topics. High scoring projects will be included in the final bond package, and the voters must approve that in the fall. Councilwoman Lewis is on the subcommittee for rec centers, libraries, and city facilities. And just also for folks, we sent it out in the email yesterday, but the Safe Streets Committee update included a link to the Vibrant Denver Bond survey, I think. So I think you're still able to fill that out with suggestions. And then the District 8 office is having a town hall on May 10th. They're working on the location, but highly encourage Central Park residents to attend. So we'll also be sharing that out in our next email update. And so now Lieutenant Hines will go to you with DPD.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry, I was having some trouble unmuting there. So I am with you though. Well, good evening, everyone. For anybody who's on the call tonight or in attendance there at the Cube who doesn't know me, I'm Kevin Hines. I'm the lieutenant responsible for Sector 1 in District 5, which is all of the Central Park neighborhood that's located in Denver. Kind of run you through some of the updates on what we have going on at the moment. We continue to track well on auto theft and theft from motor vehicle in both precincts 511 and 512. That's really good news given how bad that situation looked a year or two ago, a year and a couple of years ago. We're continuing to track in the right direction on that. We're also starting to make strides in both precincts on reducing larceny cases, which is something I've talked about on previous meetings here. Particularly with the big retail centers we have here in Central Park, larceny tends to be an outsized problem that we deal with just due to the shoplifting cases out there. We've started working on a shoplifting task force, and we've had a number of business watch meetings with stakeholders in the business community to try to get a handle on that. I think we're making some good progress there. One area that I wanted to talk about that stood out in our crime statistics in a negative way was we saw a sudden jump in aggravated assault firearms cases in precinct 512 just in the last week. And I think this is kind of a timely issue to bring up because when we started digging into the crime stats to see if there were any patterns to that, what we discovered is that all of those cases were domestic violence cases. So they were all cases where somebody had menaced an intimate partner with a firearm, and those 4 cases led to a 100% jump in those crimes for the reporting period. Given the discussion we just had here, I just wanted to bring some attention to that and say again, keep an eye out for your neighbors, friends, and relatives. You might be surprised at who the victims are sometimes in these cases. And if you see somebody where you think they might be a victim, please reach out to us so we can try to get them some assistance before that cycle of violence escalates to something really bad happening. The other thing I wanted to talk about tonight was some issues we've been finding lately out at Northfield Mall, particularly around Harkins Theater and particularly on Friday and Saturday nights. We've been getting a lot of reports and complaints from mall management about large groups of teenagers and other kids out there causing problems, everything from just generalized disorderly conduct, trespassing in stores and on the mall property after they've been told to leave. We've had issues with Lime scooters being driven recklessly through there. I didn't realize this, but maybe some of you who use the Lime scooters regularly were aware of this, but apparently you can do a burnout on a Lime scooter. I didn't know they had enough power for that, but apparently these kids have been doing burnouts through groups of other people and had a couple cases where small children were hit by teens behaving recklessly on these Lime scooters and things of that nature. As we attempt to address that, we've been working with malls management to try to come up with more effective ways to discourage that behavior. One of the things we've been doing is working with the scooter providers, the service providers like Lime, to see if we can get some geofencing in that area. Now, we know a lot of people go to the mall using the scooters, and what we've proposed is that they just make it into one of their designated slow zones so that people can't go zipping through there at 20 plus miles an hour on a scooter and put people at risk. That's something the mall's management has also requested. So I think we'll see that going into effect soon, and hopefully that will slow down some of that reckless operating behavior around crowds of people. Additionally, we've been trying to work with mall management to give them a little more support in cases where they've trespassed individuals from the property and they continue to hang out at the property. We've had a number of these teens that have used fairly colorful language to tell security and even our officers that they're not going anywhere and nobody can make them. So we've put more off-duty officers out there on the property, both at the mall and at the theater itself. This past weekend, they had a few issues out there. 5 citations were written for issues of trespass, and additionally, one person was cited for police interference. Now, given that a lot of these individuals are juveniles and some of them don't have prior records, we are looking at using our alternative to citation program for diversion options for them so that these individuals have a chance to improve their behavior without getting too far into the criminal justice system. So that may be an option we use in a number of these cases for first-time offenders, but we are trying to make it clear that folks are welcome at the mall for shopping and lawful purposes, but they can't be causing disturbances. They can't be refusing to leave when mall staff ask them to leave or running people over with scooters and things of that nature. So it is a problem that's growing out there. Some of you may have seen it if you've been out to the movies or restaurants there late on Friday and Saturday nights, but I just want everybody to be aware that it's something we're aware of. We're working with mall management and we're trying to get a handle on it as well. I think those are kind of the big updates we have for the sector right now. I am joined on the call by Technician Ferenz. I'll see if she has any updates and then happy to answer any questions any of you may have as well.
Good evening, everybody. The only update I have is we do have our monthly commanders meeting. It's this Thursday. We always host our commanders meeting on the third Thursday at 6 p.m. It's in person at our new District 5 station at 12025 East 45th Avenue, my apologies. And we do it virtual as well. I will put that virtual link in the chat. I believe that's all we have going on. Oh, next Saturday, I could also send the flyer to somebody to distribute to everybody. But we do have drug take back, which is next Saturday, April 26th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. We do have 3 sites within the district for those drop off locations. One is going to be our District 5 station. The other is going to be the Rose ER Center on Wabash Street in Central Park. And then the third is going to be the King Supers in Green Valley Ranch. But I can send those flyers to be distributed, and I'll drop the link in the chat for the meeting on Thursday. That is it.
Questions, folks? Okay, none here. I think we can move on to Diane with the MCA.
Just real quickly, we had our egg scramble and got rid of about 12,000 eggs on Saturday.
It's a very expensive event this year.
It was, we have partnered since we first started with a group out of St. Louis, and they are mentally challenged individuals that stuff all the eggs for us. And then they send.
Oh, okay, they're not realized.
So we actually, they support us and we support them.
Got it.
So they do the majority of the stuffing of the eggs. So that's very helpful. And, we had, just a huge, group of people. So obviously from the number of eggs that got rid of, usually we say 10 eggs per child. But I would say if you got a little bit more, which was okay because we needed the field cleared. Anyway, just on to other things. Our event calendar will be in the May front porch. So look for it. We have a full calendar getting started. And we have a shade structure that will be going into Beeler Park. The footers were put in, but it was never installed that was something that got VE'd out. So they kept the footers in for us so we could come back and do it at a later time. So this is the time. So out of Beeler Park, they will be getting a shade structure this summer. The fountains will be going on after May 1st, kind of in that first part of May. Covers have come off for pools already. Water goes into Aviator starting tomorrow. And the remaining covers come off on Thursday. And then we've got, as far as hiring goes, we're in the process this month of taking all rehires. So all former staff that wants to come back, this is their time to apply and get in. And then May 1st, we will open up for new applications. And that includes front desk, lifeguards, managers. We hopefully will have by May 1st, all of our managers, but head lifeguards, etc.
And what's the age on that?
16 and up. If they are 15, they may apply to be part of our junior lifeguard program. And we do training. We can do the training for them. So we'll have sign up dates and that will all be on our website. No, they have to be 15. If 14 is like that, we see so many asks of 14 because they're in that age group between when they can be parts of camps and aren't parts of camps. So that's kind of a tough age, but 15 is the age that will take them for junior lifeguards. So I think that was all my notes to share. Anybody have any questions? Oh, total number of staff will be about 175 for the summer. So we take a lot of kids.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know. I see there. I don't think we have anyone on from the Sam Gary Library. So Layla, I see you're on from Bluff Lake if you'd like to provide an update.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have broken ground officially. So if you've come to the site, things look a little bit different. So I'm going to drop the link in here, and I know it's been shared before. Thank you all for sharing it. We have some details about how to access Bluff Lake during construction, because our main parking lot, well, our only parking lot and our main entrance are going to be off limits while construction is happening. So we have a new entrance over on Havana right now, which is going to be a permanent entrance. We're really excited to have that. It was something that the community wanted for a long time for folks who access the site that way in other ways. So that will stay there, and then we'll have a temporary entrance that's on MLK. Again, it's like just, pedestrian or rolling in. So we won't have a parking lot. So we're just asking folks to be cognizant of your neighbors if you're driving there. Try if you can to either bike or walk or roll into the site. It's always better. And then we have raised over $7 million now of our 8.5 million goal, and we have this amazing challenge grant from 3 of our families who have already been lead donors. At least one of whom, yeah, one is from Park Hill and one is from Central Park, and they have a $500,000 challenge if we can have 1,000 donors join us, and those can be old donors, new donors. So we just crossed over the 500 donor threshold, which is really exciting. So we are expecting construction to last until November. Of course, that is subject to change. But our construction company, our general contractor, has been really awesome. But if anyone has any questions, I'll also put my email address in here, especially when it comes to access or programs. All our programs are running still at full capacity, but obviously things will just like look a little different. But our field trips are still going. Our forest school is still going. We have uh, also our homeschool program that is still going. So a lot of these programs and camps, of course, they're able to still run at full capacity with the alternate entrances. So we're really excited about that. But if anyone has questions about any of that stuff, I'm open to answering.
I just have a question on the challenge, the donation challenge. Is there a deadline on when you need to reach the 1,000 donors, or it's at the point at which you get 1,000 donors, it's
Well,
reached?
yeah, we're hoping for June, but we don't have like a hard deadline. That's just when it would work best as far as our thinking about like just the when construction is going on. That would be amazing. But yeah, we don't really have like a hard deadline, but we do have we have mini challenges. Like we have like 200 donors for April, that I think is at like 80 donors or so right now. So we'll have a lot of like kind of monthly mini challenges. If you're part of like a group like the like camp families or birders, we have like lots of little mini challenges there as well. Like they have their own campaign pages, which has been really cool to see. Like a lot of our communities, I know our Central Park Business Association also has a page, which is really cool. So if you're like a business that's part of the association, it's really cool to give there too. And yeah, just kind of like showing how these different folks who are using Bluff Lake and loving Bluff Lake are being a part of this project.
Any other questions? No, I think we're set. So thank you, Leila.
Thank you.
Good luck with the construction. Okay, we can move into the board hour now. Folks need to get up and stretch.
Can I make one?
Sure.
We go to the board hour.
Sure.
We had it in the newsletter. The Westerly Creek election
Oh, yeah.
is happening. Ballots are being mailed to all residents. There are 2 seats that are open. 4 people are running. I am one of those people that is running. So if you get your ballot, I'd appreciate that. And the election day. So the ballots get mailed out. They started this week. They'll go through next week, and then the ballots have to be received by May 6th.
And
So-
is there, I think as part of the ballot, there is like a self-addressed stamped envelope to
I don't-
record it, or do you have?
I don't know that it's a self-addressed stamped
Okay.
envelope, but I think it's a self-addressed envelope.
Okay,
But I don't think it's Matt, you might know.
Yeah, it is. You have to pay for your own stamp and
okay,
make sure to get it in the mail back to the law firm that represents the district, counts the votes, and that's where the ballots will be coming from and returned to for counting. So yeah, May 6th is the deadline. So make sure to have, I think that's right. And so make sure you have them mailed, the week before. I think that's a Tuesday.
Yeah, and I put a link in.
oh, it's funny, I just put the information that was in the email in the chat as well, for folks. Okay,
There's
great.
no in-person drop-off possibility for it.
There is not.
Okay, I'm on the wrong. Just a second, sorry, guys.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, thanks, Diane. All right, so now we'll move on to the treasurer's report. Brian, I'm gonna pull this up and share my screen.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think only updates from last month where we have the mail chip monthly costs, and so that number goes up. We had to pay our state filing to keep our nonprofit status in the state. That was the $25, and that was the only updates that I had.
We have the budget request. Should we count up if we've got a quorum? Because I know there's actually a few people. I know Kristen and Heather had conflicting meetings tonight and weren't able to join us. And I
Got
think
it.
Tommy was going to try to call in, but I don't think he's on the Zoom.
We got Trisha and Jamie
Matt,
and Matt. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I think that gets us quorum.
okay. That sounds, all right, that's good. Then we'll move on to,
Well, and I think the question, so the INC we agreed we were co-hosting the movie,
Yeah.
but they're asking for a donation to offset some of the costs.
yeah,
And so Liz and Carol and I talked about making $100 contribution to them. That it's not really, Inc. didn't have a committee, but we said it would be part of the outreach committee, but the outreach committee is already spending their approved annual budget on
it's not gift card.
Amazon gift cards for the survey. So we just thought it would be good to bring it to the board and make sure there were no objections to that. And then I have to figure out where to send it to.
Right,
So,
and that would probably be the board chair, the INC board chair, and I can give you Kevin, and
Yeah.
I can get you that.
they have a
Pete, rather.
They have a PO box that we usually send it to. So.
And there will also be volunteer asks as like co-hosts, but this is kind of right now is just, seeing if we can contribute
just-
to the cost of it. Yeah, go
Let
ahead.
me, and then the education committee has taken this on, and
Okay,
so it was agreed that we would be one of, and there's more than 40 RNOs who are co-hosting this event on June 12th at the Holiday Theater. It's a movie it's a documentary called Join or Die, and it's tied heavily to the gentleman who wrote the book Bowling Alone. And it's about community connections, and it's very timely. At least I think it's very timely. It's well done. The tickets, there's probably about 415 tickets available. They're free, but they're asking for maybe a minimum of $8 donation. And then there's going to be food. They're having a bartender. There's going to be drinks and other things. There's going to be a means for donating food to a food bank. So we're looking at 1 or 2 volunteers from each RNO to do various tasks. And the meeting that I attended about 2 weeks ago, we talked about having teenagers get involved with this as volunteers as well, and particularly with the food bank. So that's what this ask is about. And we will be advertising, marketing, what have you, certainly through May, in various ways. And if you have creative ways to do that and take that on, we'd appreciate it. But it's a Denver event, and I think it's going to be really valuable.
Yeah. I think with 40 organizations, if you only just have 10 people
I know.
from each neighborhood that's
Yeah.
sponsoring it, you're at capacity for the event, but I highly recommend getting involved. Another kind of volunteer ask that I'm happy to do is just arrange carpools, because it is like on the other side of town. So I'm happy to like kind of, as part of like promoting this, for folks in the neighborhood to go to, that if we can have a few carpools, I think would make a lot of sense.
I like that.
But I guess, yeah, as of right now, so actually is the like budget proposal vote like moot because it's the education committee is taking it now?
I think it's just knowledge. I think
Okay.
it's fine.
Okay.
Unless anyone has a strong objection, I don't think
No.
there's any.
So is the $100, I see it's between 50 and 150. How did you come up with 100?
We just went in the middle.
Yeah, it's like a sliding scale for RNOs.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Like, are they giving a,
I don't think it's I don't think it's an open.
so why is the money needed to offset if they're selling
Food
drinks?
and,
So I think there's food, but the
and
drinks, I think.
they've hired a bartender. I can get the breakdown for you money wise. And excuse me, I'm meeting in 2 days as well. So I'll have some more information.
But wait, so is the food being given away?
Good question. Sorry, I don't know the answer, but I'll get it to you.
Okay, because when I asked for the information, you were like, oh, it's for food and drinks. I was like, oh, okay, but I didn't know there was bar. Awesome,
Well, when they said bartender, I figured.
yes. I guess, and any objections to it? Okay. All right. And honestly, if like the people on the Zoom can't go from Central Park, that's our kind of contribution of participants to the event. So, okay. So committee report outs, I wanted to just make sure that, we had enough time on the agenda to just kind of talk about the Safe Streets related meetings. So we'll get to that, report, that committee last, but if you want to start with education, Carol.
Well, I just wanted to
Okay.
limit it to the movie and move on.
Okay.
Okay?
All right. And then the DEI committee, I guess David, Matt, and Jamie, we're all part of the state capitol visit. If anybody, and Heather, yeah. I just mean for the folks who are on, if anybody wants to kind of just share a little bit from the state capitol field trip, which was, it was informative, but not necessarily, I think, the most productive. But yeah, just to kind of we met with Senate President Coleman. We had kind of a half-hour meeting, and the education committee meeting where our other two representatives are members of, was supposed to be meeting at that time, but actually just hadn't started because there was so much work they had done that day. So we kind of just reconvened and just did like a little debrief with our group. And I can share my takeaways, but I'd like to hear from other folks who went also.
I thought it was interesting. From my perspective, I learned a lot about like Senator Coleman's role in the Democratic Party and like managing like the other senators and like getting consensus and bringing like the team together. So that to me is what felt like the biggest takeaway for me, was like learning about his role as like the Senate president and less as like an actual legislator. So if that makes sense.
Yeah, and yeah. Matt, did you want to say anything also? I think you're unmuted.
Yeah, just I thought it was interesting, and it prompted me to look more deeply at the bills that are under consideration. And there were two things about it that stood out to me that we kind of emailed. And that, anyway, my takeaways were, One of the bills that's under consideration is to subject special districts to the Ethics Commission, which it currently is not in Colorado. And so I plan to write to our representatives and ask them to support that bill if they're not already. And the other one is, we talked a little bit about Tabor and how that just fouls up the orderly process of governance in Colorado. But I really personally don't see any way that that's going to, be taken away by the voters. And so it really would require, legal action to say this, law is not constitutional, I guess. And so there's a lawsuit resolution, I think, before both houses of the Colorado legislature. And again, I plan to ask our representatives to support those initiatives because I don't know how likely it is that that would lead to the outcome where we don't have to have the Tabor yoke around the state budget, but it seems like the most likely path forward at this point. Those were my takeaways. Thanks.
Jane.
I just think it's great to have a presence at the Capitol, and so it was really nice to have a meeting with Senator Coleman, and yeah, I did sort of also look up what was coming under review, which was, it's just good to be educated in that. And then I guess I paid more attention to the news, and like Michael Bennett has just announced that he would take on Tabor in his run for the governorship. So I think that's an issue that we're going to see keep coming up as people become more aware of what it is. And I was, made me kind of interested in the educational campaign on telling people exactly what Tabor is and like what it does, which I think is probably something we're going to see more of.
I think like I also attended and there were two other DEI committee members who attended, and I think I saw it as like a really useful exercise in like not just going, but the preparation for it. One of our committee members actually did a comprehensive, like in a Google Doc, like a comprehensive list of all of the bills that our legislators were kind of touching in some way as sponsors or co-sponsors. And it really is just like, it was very overwhelming. Like, I think like just like the feeling of overwhelm was like part of like the usefulness of the exercise. And just like that, it felt impossible to like, to really get a handle on how to engage with that, like at that level of the state government, because I think that as an RNO, we have a lot of experience dealing with city agencies. We're, I think, fairly well aware for your average kind of resident in Denver, we're pretty well aware of different kind of city and municipal systems and how policy happens at the at the local level. And it really was eye-opening to just kind of get a feeling for what's happening at the state level, and we were all kind of, it was an opportunity for us to speak as individuals. So we weren't speaking on behalf of the organization, obviously, or even of the neighborhood. But I do think it is really useful for folks who want to get just kind of get involved and get informed about what is happening at the state level. Like, I think it's a really good thing to do. And I think we have, some lessons learned for how to approach it next year, and just kind of see, even like legislation will get passed, will it get signed or will it get vetoed? And so just kind of following that process out, which will be ending in just a few weeks at the beginning of May. And then the signature or veto process goes beyond that. So anyway, I think it was just a really interesting first step, and I would encourage anybody else in the community or, on the board who is interested in kind of just seeing about policy at the state level to kind of just get involved and help, just kind of, it is really overwhelming. So if there's, many hands make light work. And so just kind of jump in because it really is like a fire hose, I think, during the legislative session. Okay.
Start again.
The legislative session, it will end in May. It doesn't start again until until it starts in January 2026 will be the 2026 legislative session. I think, is it only 160 or 180 days? Or so, yeah, it's very short. And so then there's kind of what's called like the interim period. And sometimes there might be special sessions called, depending on what's going on. But it's, I think, largely like what we learned, because I asked Senator Coleman, like, what do you do during the interim? And he was like, oh, I mostly do kind of like party, I do party work. Like I'm not, and so it is interesting to see like, well, what do our other representatives do during the interim where they don't necessarily have those obligations? Like, what are they doing to kind of prepare for the next legislative session, and kind of line up like what sort of bills they want to be sponsoring. So I don't think it actually like stops, like it kind of keeps going, but the actual session itself doesn't start until January again. So it's, yeah, I think it's just kind of like crazy town there right now until the very end of the session. So, okay. Health and safety, you all were talking for this.
Amanda and I just met. And, we're gonna meet every couple of months, like 45 minutes before like the actual CPUN meeting. So our next meeting will be at 5:45 PM on June 17th. So here, I don't know if we want to maybe set up a Zoom too. I don't know if it's possible, but
It's possible.
okay, cool. But yeah, we can talk more about that. And then I just had some other kind of random like safety updates. I attended the district attorney community academy. Really interesting. Kind of learned more about like the prosecution side of our criminal justice system. I'd love to learn more about like the public defender's office. That was something that I kind of asked about. They talked a little bit about like the witness protection program, and evidently the fall community academy that they do, I was told, talks a little bit more about like restorative like justice. And so this seemed to be a little bit more kind of around like punitive justice, but it's really interesting. Glad I went. I also attended last week an event put on by the Transforming Our Communities Alliance, which is part of the Task Force to Reimagine Policing and Public Safety, with Dr. Lisa Calderon, and Pastor Terrence Hughes, about education-based discipline. Will Denver Police Department's new approach help or hurt community? And the guests were Chief Thomas and Dr. Tracy Kazee, who's the co-founder of the Center for Policing Equity. And something that I thought was kind of interesting is that 65% of cases in PD are like oral or written reprimands, and the purpose of this was
You can get on the side if you want.
An alternative to like punitive discipline for police officers. Evidently, complaints have decreased in the last 3 years. It doesn't seem like the independent monitor is that supportive of this. And then they also both Chief Thomas and Dr. Kazee said that admittedly that this is not an evidence-based model. So Chief Thomas was going to start to do a little bit more community outreach about this and kind of the purpose of implementing this. And then also at the Transforming Our Communities Alliance meeting this afternoon, they are going to have a resident lobby day at City Council on June 9th. From 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. where we're going to meet with all of the city councilors, just kind of learn more about what they do. Sounds like all of the city councilors except for Councilman Flynn have agreed to participate in this. And then one other piece is evidently the Flock Group contract is coming up to city council. So that's the license plate readers all over the city. And there's 112 cameras placed around the city. And we learned about this more from Councilwoman Parody's office. They had a representative there, and about how license plates are tracked for around 30 days. That 3,500 law enforcement agencies use this tool, and departments can share license plate information with other departments who are using this system. So according to some of the information that Councilwoman Parady's office received, 22 states were data sharing with DPD in a 30-day period. You don't need a warrant to access this camera data. DPD does share this information with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, which assisted in some of the recent ICE raids. And so I thought that that was really important to recommend. And some of the risks they concern about like trans folks, because it's sharing information with license plates that can be tied to driver's licenses and gender identity, people seeking abortions, and immigrants. 2/3 of departments, DPD size, are using this flock surveillance software, and it also has the power to create like what's called a hot list, which like can like trigger more information. So they also said that 17% of the time DPD officers are looking at plates without a case number. So that's something that the police department is asking their staff who go in to do a license plate search to find out more information about, to input a case number, but not all of these cases are being done with a case number. And also they said that 1 out of 10 plate reads are inaccurate. So there's also a Guardian article that came out about these car trackers and license plate readers in sanctuary cities are being used in immigration reads. And then next Monday will be the first reading at the city council meeting about like renewing this contract. So
Like, is there any sort of courtesy hearing?
I believe that it already happened with, or maybe like, or
Well,
at least the safety.
I was gonna say they'd have the committee hearing, but if it's up on first reading, they can also request a courtesy hearing.
Oh, okay.
Which would move it to the like not 3:30 time, but to the 5:30 time.
Got it.
So
Okay, I'm not sure.
Just
But
FYI.
yeah, but I thought that's what we spent most of the meeting talking about. And so the ask was to contact our council folks just to let them know our thoughts on this tool. And then also the Office of the Independent Monitor put out their 2024 annual report. So I'm happy to share that with you too.
Okay, if you
To
could
share.
share that.
Yeah.
Share that.
Technology called again?
Flock,
Is it FL?
FLOCK group.
Did Chief Thomas say anything about whether DPD has policies about what sort of information DPD shares with other agencies?
So it was primarily around not sharing with like federal agencies in terms of ICE, but if they're sharing it with like the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, which has assisted in ICE raids and has been like directed to do immigration enforcement, I don't know how like effective that actually is. So yeah. And then
Well, I do have to say, I think we need to move.
yeah, that's fine.
Safe streets.
That's okay.
That's okay, just because.
I met with Heather about sustainability today too, and she asked me to give a quick update about that too. So we're gonna revive that too every other month. And we were thinking about doing like some field trips to like the Arsenal, maybe Bluff Lake Nature Center, Urban Farms, Gotham Greens. And I reached out to Suncor too about their community relations, just to see if they would be willing to talk.
Say, I could smell Suncor at my house this morning.
So, but yeah, so talking about sustainability stuff too. So
Health and safety is going to be before the board meeting. Are you meeting every other month or
every 2 months, yeah.
Okay.
So on even numbered months.
Yeah, the June months, yeah,
So,
every other,
okay.
yeah, every even month, yeah, every other.
Okay.
Yeah. even,
Okay.
so, yeah,
Great.
that's what I got.
I'll include that. Thank you. So, okay, Carol, I guess if you wanna.
Want to do the CP?
The CP Classic. So the planning committee for that, next meeting is this Thursday, April 17th, 6:30 PM, same Zoom link that we use for this meeting. But the main ask right now is, so the tickets are, live. If you go to the event page, and I'll also put it in the chat, if anybody would like to, get tickets for it, you can, please spread the word. And kind of to that end, we have flyers that I have here. And we just need some volunteers to post them at kind of businesses and, you know, library, rec center, all of that stuff around the community. So please see me or email me, if you're interested in volunteering. And I will, for the most part, like I have the list of addresses that we used for the survey. And so I can just assign some of those addresses and leave these on people's front porches, if they'd like.
Give a brief description of what it is.
Oh, sorry, this is Central Park Classic Mini Golf, like third annual Central Park Classic Mini Golf fundraiser. And it's an event that we partner with Central Park Business Association at Flightco on Sunday, May 18th, starting at noontime. And basically it's there will be kind of tabling from different businesses. There are food and drink specials. There will be a kids area, and there will be mini golf. So it's just an opportunity for families and neighbors to kind of have a goofy time playing mini golf and supporting neighborhood organizations. So thanks,
I
ma'am.
put it in chat.
Okay, thank you. All right, Carol, did you want to?
Just very quickly, a big long-term issue with Safe Streets Committee and with the Education Committee is children and families and even staff negotiating how, however they choose to transport themselves, whether they're walking or biking or scooters or in cars, safely to school sites. And it's an ongoing issue. It's been going on for a long time. When the Education Committee did a survey last year, that was an issue around transportation. And there is an organization called Safe Routes to School. So this was not a new issue. But recently we were invited by, and I see Joe on there, so I'm assuming it's Joe Landon, who is an MCA delegate, I believe in Beaver Park, and he invited the Safe Streets, Amy and I, to come to a meeting. Specifically, he had taken video at Northfield High School on 56 of students running across the street back and forth to go get food, do whatever, after school, at lunch. It's 2 campuses, there's 2 different lunch periods, that sort of thing. And just as a parent, an adult child, but nevertheless a parent and a teacher, I was horrified by what I saw. And so he's very concerned. He documented this and shared it with this group and Park Creek Metro District, and was looking for alternatives in terms of what can we do, what can we construct to get kids safely back and forth, because they're not going to not go back and forth across 56. And so the Park Creek Metro District got involved, and then there were school administrators, and it was not just Northfield High School, but it was also Inspire and Denver Green. They both, they share a campus not far from Northfield High School. And then, as it turns out, Willow Elementary as well. So, and I'm going to ask Matt, because he was at the meeting, and I'm going to ask Joe too, if he wants to say anything. This is a situation that is right now in motion, so to speak. So there was that meeting, and then on April 11th, which was this last Friday, there was a meeting at the MCA next door, and quite the turnout. And so Park Creek folks were there, MCA delegates were there, parents were there. We had a couple of students there who spoke about biking to school and about what they had to do to be safe to bike to school. And then there were, let's see, I was there, Matt was there, Heather was there, Amy, and then Jack was there too in his capacity as an MCA employee. And Dottie was there, the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure. So it was quite a group. It was an hour-long meeting, and school administrators spoke. We had quite a few speakers, and Amy Ford was there, who is the executive director of Dottie. And right now, and so that's just Friday, this is Tuesday, and I just got an email from Joe at 5:30 that I haven't completely digested yet in terms of where we are now in the moment. So Matt, do you want to say something about your attendance and about what your takeaway is with this?
Just briefly, I think it was a positive step in the right direction to have the MCA, Park Creek, and Dottie engaged. We were missing DPS, and some of the issues are the way the bus stops are set up at the DPS schools. But I do think that there are some, concrete suggestions in place to improve and there will be at some point, I think it's unclear what the timing is, but I think it's called a Red Hawk crosswalk at Beeler and 56th Avenue. So kind of in between where the two crossings are. Some students will probably still risk it and go in the middle of the street, but there will be a high visibility crosswalk there and some other things. So I think that there's, we're still in sort of a tricky nether region, if you will, where some of the streets are owned by Park Creek and some are owned by the city. And the city is, while they do a lot of the maintenance and kind of ownership facilities, technically they don't own all of the streets. And so they're reluctant in some ways to follow through or just get the job done on things like signage and curb paint, no parking areas and so forth. But I do think that we have, positive momentum. Joe Landon did a great job of bringing this about to the Park Creek board and getting it then in front of Dottie as well. And so I think we have some positive movement to see some improvements in these, especially in the school zones on the north side of the neighborhood.
And I second that. Heather brought video from Willow. We had video over at Inspire, and I think that was very helpful with Dottie.
Was that shared during the meeting?
Excuse me?
Was the video like
Yes.
actually screened?
Yes. So, Joe, do you want to say anything?
Hey, thank you so much to the Safe Street Committee for participating and kind of being a force and being in the room. I think it brings a lot to the process and show that there's a lot of community buy-in. I think, at least in my opinion, that we've raised awareness of the issue. I believe we got recognition from Doty that deficiencies exist in the safety measures that are lacking around the north end schools, and that's being the 3 campuses north of I-70. I believe we have momentum on this, and we'll be following through. I think as Matt notes, there are technical issues with who can do what and when and where, and things that need to be figured out. But I believe, led by the attorney for Park Creek Metro District, that we're going to be able to push through to get some things in place. I did find it very interesting that school plans are approved by the state and not through the local city, normal building and permitting type processes. And Doty kind of wanted to make sure we were aware of that, and that they find out after the fact what the school layout looks like. And then I also learned subsequent to in the last couple of days that Bill Roberts has some great measures in place, including 2 lanes, one for buses, one for cars. And that it may be, an architectural, a selection of who was used by DPS as architects back in the day, and the firm that designed the North End schools was not the same, and may have been a little bit more cost effective or what, I don't know, but did not put certain things in place. And so while we have signs that say school zone, entering school zone, we don't have anything within those zones that really help to create a safe environment. So again, thank you. And there's directions in the email, Carol, that you mentioned, and followed up with Jack and Paul today. And they want us to just get that wish list, and then from there, it'll foster conversation going.
No, this is still a process, and I appreciate the email. I appreciate the collaboration, and I'm going to distill some of this information and send it to the board so that we're all knowledgeable, and we all continue to collaborate with one another about this. So thanks, Joe.
Yeah, thank you.
I just also wanted to chime in on the follow-up a little bit, because I reached out to the district data office since Jesse who's usually here representing that office, was not going to be here tonight. I actually reached out to Bree, who has been working on this issue in the district data office, and she actually had not been aware of any meeting on April 11th. And I feel bad because I had considered sending it to her, but I had assumed that she was kind of on the list of folks. But she just requested that, that I think that this is definitely something she's been following closely. So if she could be CC'd
Great.
on any of the email follow-ups, and if you need her email address,
I've
I'll
got it.
okay, you've got it.
I've got it.
Like, yeah, if you can just loop her in
I will.
so that the city council office can assist in any way that they're able to also.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. I guess any other takeaways from this?
It was fascinating to me to see just the different layers. I mean, that was what came to me, the layers and the different entities and sometimes the lack of communication. And there's a lot to know and to piece together. But what I've gotten out of this is the collaboration piece.
Yeah.
And it's nice to have all of these things, and we aren't going to take that away. I mean, we know who we are now, and we know who our allies are, and we can continue, whether it's this issue or other issues, to connect with one another.
And the information that you provide to the board, could you kind of give like a little map of that? I mean, not necessarily, it doesn't have to be like a little red string diagram, but just like a little map of the different stakeholders.
Sure.
And kind of different interests, kind of represented. Okay. All right, well, thank you. I think that does it for the committee report outs. So we can move on to just a couple of board topics before we end tonight's meeting. The first one is just a preliminary conversation. I actually missed this request initially in my email, and then when I was going through it again today, I realized Nathan, who represents the shops in Northfield apartment project group, had reached out and just let me know that they're up before the planning board on May 7th. And he asked if our RNO would consider writing a letter of support for the rezoning, or if there was any information that we needed in order to consider that request. And so I think that one of the main questions that we've had, one, I want to go through the rezoning application and send it to everybody so that we have the same information that's being submitted to the city. In addition to, I'll also share the recording of the meeting that we had with them for folks to look at. But largely, I think a lot of folks are just concerned about the sort of traffic study that they are going to be doing. So I've requested a traffic assessment memo. He said that they probably won't have a full mobility study done by the time, that we need to be considering this. But he can get us like some sort of traffic assessment memo that's part of that project to help board consideration. So I guess I don't know, I think, Brian, this is where I'll ask you as kind of a longtime member of the RNO, because of the nature of this development, has CPUN ever written letters of support for specific projects other than, the affordable one we did last spring?
I mean, the affordable one was the most recent one, but there have been, and I would just say a very few.
Yeah.
Because there haven't been many rezonings, because the way the zoning in a
Yeah.
lot of the places, it was, a lot of the businesses have come and just notified us, but they didn't need to get rezoning. It was
Yeah.
more just going to the design review committee. So yeah, we have, honestly, but we haven't done it a lot.
I was gonna say, do folks have any feelings one way or the other about considering this?
I don't know enough.
Yeah, well, that's what I would want to do is have a process of providing the information on what's in the rezoning application, what was in their presentation, the work that they're doing around kind of and so the traffic study that they're doing, I think, is kind of looking at current traffic conditions around the Northfield Boulevard and then out to Central Park Boulevard. And then a projection of the impact of the project on that area. And then I don't know if that if that includes on their end, any sort of recommendations for mitigating that impact. Particularly around
That on
traffic
November
safety.
6th.
What?
We heard that on November 6th, that there was
Yes.
going to be this study, but I haven't learned anything since.
I know, that's why I've requested that information. That's what so yeah, I think that our options can be, we don't have enough information to write a support letter, but I want to make sure we have some information that we can assess as like, is this enough or is this not enough? And then talk about it, but we basically have until May 6th. To consider, so I'm trying to get all of the information together. Any of the folks who are on the Zoom, do you have any thoughts that you want to give on this request?
Well, my only thought about it is that I think that Northfield property is not part of the MCA
It's
because
not.
it's, so with the zoning change, it's going to be residential. So like, do they intend to opt into the MCA voluntarily, or are they going to have to get sued into it? That would be probably the main sticking point for me personally on being in favor of the zoning change.
What's because we have the same issue with the RK Mechanical.
Yeah.
When they build those houses, Jack had said that they would not be part of it.
Well, it's not currently, but I think that, I don't know, I don't obviously have any idea what goes on with the MCA, but I would think that they would, as a neighbor, I would think that when it is a residential property with residents who, and even if it has its own pool, I mean, apartment buildings have pools too, they still use other amenities around the neighborhood and are part of sort of the broader community that should support the MCA. So I don't think there's, I don't know what the deal is with RK, but in this particular case with Northfield, if they want to switch to residential, then they ought to join the MCA.
So
I think the property has to be, the MCA actually has to change, just like we did, where we fixed our boundaries. I think the MCA,
to change the footprint, like,
Yeah,
so it's essentially, I think,
their
the term is like
bylaws.
getting annexed into it. So I think that I see two follow-up questions then. So one is for Nathan, is to ask just will this project get annexed into the rest of the development, like, or the MCA maintenance at least? So we can ask that. And then we can also ask Jack, since he's not on the meeting tonight, just ask Jack if he's aware if the Shops at Northfield project is going to be annexed, and also if the RK Mechanical one is. I think that the last time I heard from Jack, I think that RK was going to be, but I don't know about the Shops at Northfield. But so I'm just making a note to send out those emails after this meeting.
I'd also be curious to know, like, I know that they mentioned during the presentation that they would have affordable housing built into it. I'd be curious to know the percentage that they're thinking about, or is that even part of?
It was part of the presentation.
Was, okay.
And I think it might be in the rezoning. That's why I want to look at the rezoning
Okay.
information. But I think that was in there, and I was actually really interested to learn that they'd be financing the affordable units kind of separately from like the low income housing tax credit system that is kind of typically part of those developments. So I will look into that. So all of this to say is that this is something that's kind of like before us to consider. And I think that there's a little bit of, I'll do a little bit of like herding of cats of getting the information that I can. And then I think, between now and May 6th, we can just kind of determine, like, over email with each other, do we have enough information to go to a vote on this? Or do we have any follow-up questions? Do we not know enough? But I think that's a good place to leave it for tonight.
12%.
So a 12%, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, up to 60%.
And I think that based on like the current, like what they require in the community planning and development is that the affordable has to be built. Well, I think they were going to build it integrated with the rest of the buildings, and that it would also, at each phase of the project, they would be building the affordable units with it. So I mean, I think that those are good, kind of good indications. But we'll follow up on that by email. So the board slate update, I typed in review, is one interview is done. We have 2 remaining interviews tomorrow on Wednesday, so we'll have the recommendation from the recruitment panel plus candidate statements and recordings out to the board by end of day on Thursday. Board slate, so I'll just request, if anybody has any major objections to it, to let me know by end of day on Saturday, because we'll have to post the slate on the CPUN website on Sunday.
Are you gonna, being someone that's, I think, on the slate from the existing board, do we have to write a statement?
We haven't.
I'm just,
I guess, yeah.
I mean, if we're putting statements for new,
So
I went back and we didn't last time, so.
what we did last year was say, this is the slate. Here's where you can learn more about the current members who are re-upping. And here's the information on the new folks who are on the slate.
Okay.
So I think that'll cover it.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Did anybody from the existing board say they worked?
Yeah, Trisha is
That's what I thought. It was only, I missed the last meeting, so yeah. I thought it was just Trisha was the only.
yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, we'll get that stuff to you guys on by Thursday evening. We have the welcome bags, as you can see, monthly thing. But actually, something that is interesting is that we have 11 bags going to individual residences. And then we have another 10 bags that are actually slated for, we have to deliver them to the property manager for one of the apartments. It's like the Solara or Solana, apartment buildings. And they actually get, I think, about 20 new residents a month, it seems. So they will easily, so they'll be distributing welcome bags for the first time to renters in the community.
Because I think there's 2,
So-
one in Wheeler Park and there's one.
Jen from CPBA gave me the address, I think. So yeah, if there is like someone who has enough room in their car to take those 10 and then take them to the apartment, let me know. So, and then the look ahead for May, it's our annual forum. We will have the board vote on current and new members. We'll get updates from city officials. I already have Councilwoman Lewis will be speaking. Councilwoman Parity will also be joining us. We kind of usually don't engage with our at-large members as much. But I think that for our annual forum, I invited actually both at-large members. Councilmember Parity can make it, Councilwoman Gonzalez Gutierrez can't. But she actually she said, put me into your June meeting. So she'll be speaking at our June meeting. I also reached out to Brookfield. And so Kelly is no longer with Brookfield. The person who replaced Kelly is also no longer with Brookfield. So I've reached out to a third person at Brookfield. Also, so anyway, I'll keep you guys posted on that if I hear that it was just kind of been an interesting ride. And then we'll also, Heather and Amanda and I are working on the community survey. We need to kind of circle up and work on that, but Heather and Amanda will be presenting on the results of the community survey. So
It's here, right?
yes, it is here at the Cube, May 20th at 6:30 p.m. And just something that I wanted folks to think about, because we kind of in December we had a happy hour. I was wondering if there's, however we do our time on May 20th, either at maybe after the May 20th meeting, we can just kind of get together to welcome any board members. Just so if folks can attend that meeting in person, and then either I'll bring some treats and drinks or something, but just basically so that we can all kind of just connect in person and welcome new.
And let's get calendars now,
So-
so that we're prepped for that.
Yeah,
And I'll bring some things too.
so, yeah, it's already on your calendar, it's May 20th.
Well, I know,
So,
but
but yes, yeah.
reminders.
Yeah, I will send that out. So I guess we've got 6 minutes left. Anybody got anything or are we all set for the April meeting?
We're good.
All right. Okay, well, thank you all for joining. I'll stop sharing the screen and I'll stop the recording, but thanks to everybody who's here. I'll see you in May.
Lovely.